Claire, how did you find carnivore?
Wow, if I'm truly honest, I have to personally give the praise and glory to God, really. Um, I don't say that lightly, because in 2023, I qualified as a naturopathic practitioner. And the ethos of that company was heavily plant-based. It wasn't vegan, but it was kind of more leading towards plants, nuts and seeds, legumes, mainly oily fish and chicken, but never red meat. It would be red meat on maybe once a week or once a month or something. They really put emphasis on, kind of fish and white meat, really. So I'd spent a long time kind of being taught that for 3 years. It was drummed into my head for 3 years. So, and then I did a chef course as well alongside the nutritional course, because I wanted to learn more about the foodie side. Because that is really important to me, rather than just kind of throwing herbs at people and stuff like that and saying, "Oh, you're fixed now." Do you know what I mean? I always knew it was down to what we ate, to improve health, but I didn't quite know at that point that carnivore would play a massive part later on in my story when I became ill. Now, I don't blame diet fully on my condition. Unfortunately, I lost my husband back in 2011, and he had lung cancer, and he was only 36. I was 31 at the time, and we had a 4-year-old son. And I'd suppressed so much emotions over the time that I probably put a lot of deep damage into my body. I pushed it down. I carried on working as a dental nurse. I'd been a dental nurse for about 15 years, and I was sort of self-employed. I did take some time out when he passed away. And strangely enough, when I went back, I went to work for a holistic dentist. He was really lovely, German guy, but he saw a lot of sick people. And they would come in with Lyme's disease, and they would have cancer, or quite rare autoimmune diseases. And basically, what he was doing is removing their amalgam fillings or root canal treated teeth to take the toxic load off of their body. And then he was quite good. He would talk about diet as well. He was very holistic. So that's where it was born, really. Obviously, I'd lost my husband. I'd worked and seen these people that had become ill. And one day, this lady came in and she said, "Oh, I'm studying at the College of Naturopathic Medicine." And I was like, that's really what I want to do. I'd seen these people be sick. I really, really, that was my passion. I really just wanted to help other people. So that's where it began, really. Um, and then as time went on, I'd started doing that for 3 years. And like I said, it was heavily based on, vegetables and things like that. Even on the chef course, we would never cook a steak. It would be very little amounts of chicken. And I was just crying out because I didn't really like vegetables, to be honest with you. I liked a bit of fruit here and there, but my family are like from Somerset area, so they always like worked on a farm. So I think I just had it in my blood, I just really love meat. Um, so it was a struggle, really. When I qualified, when you just kind of walk out of something, you think, I'm not really being true to myself. I'm going to try and do plans for people, but it's going to be heavily based on sort of maybe the Mediterranean diet, but kind of things that I didn't really like myself. How could I teach someone how to get better and eat vegetables when I wasn't really eating them much myself?
It's hard to convince someone to eat celery when you don't like it yourself, right?
Exactly. And it was one of those things where vegetables were nice if they were covered in something like cauliflower cheese or something like that, but it had to be hidden for me to eat it. So I just stick to like sort of berries, like strawberries and blueberries. But generally, it would always be meat, probably potatoes quite a lot. And I realised as the time went on, um, I just wasn't feeling great on the diet. I was quite healthy. I never smoked, never really drank a lot because I had my gallbladder removed when I was younger due to stomach problems. So that's where it kind of started. There was nothing wrong with my gallbladder. They took it out because they thought there was like some sludge there or something. Oh, because I was constantly getting stomach like IBS symptoms. And I didn't realize at the time that was probably the high carbohydrates I had in my diet. But anyway, sort of going forward with that, um, when I finished the nutritional course, I was kind of investigating different diets and things like that because I thought there was more out there. I thought it can't just be, you know, meat and a little bit of potatoes here and there and mainly vegetables. And it just didn't sit right with me. And then unfortunately, come August, I became quite ill. I'd got COVID for the third time. I'd had it previously before, but this time was like a mild form.
Sorry, this was August 20.
Sorry, August 2023.
Uh,
Yeah. And I'd got COVID and it was very mild. I didn't really have many symptoms or anything like that. Um, but then unfortunately, a cat that I shared with my husband that we bought as a kitten, I had to put to sleep. She wasn't very well, and watching the lights go out of her eyes just kind of must have triggered something back to me losing my husband because the next couple of days my hands had swollen up. I literally was inflamed. My whole body was inflamed. So I'd got the COVID, a few weeks later, and then my hands were swollen up. And as the months went by, I was getting sicker and sicker. And I had this heaviness in my legs, heaviness in my arms. My fingers were swollen. I couldn't bend them properly. I think they called it like mechanical hands. I just couldn't bend them properly. And come October, I just was bedbound. I don't know what had happened, but my temperature went really, really high. My heart rate was 130, and I was just basically malaised. I was confused. I didn't know what was going on. And my mum said, my wonderful mother, bless her, she was like, you have to call the emergency services now. There's something seriously not right. You're not talking to me properly on the phone. She said, if you don't call them, I will. And I was like, oh, mum, I'll be all right. Anyway, I called them and the emergency services sent out a ambulance because I'd had radiating pain from my back. If I hadn't had the sharp pain, they wouldn't have sent the ambulance out. So the ambulance came and there were two lovely people. They came in and they said, they did all my vitals and they said, you've got near sepsis. They said if you'd left it any longer, you would have been almost dead pretty much. So they rushed me in on a blue light. I said, oh no, you don't need the blue light. And he said, we do. This is serious. I just really didn't realize how serious it was. He said that he'd seen somebody about a week before, and she was like they level it to like sort of 10, and I was an 8. And she was an 8. He said she was on the floor. I don't know how you're standing up, basically. So I get to hospital and I'm there for 6 days. And then I get diagnosed with, I had pneumonia, a PE, a pulmonary embolism in the left lung. Yeah. I've always been healthy. I didn't quite understand it. I think it was the knock-on effect from the COVID, because it thickens the blood. And, yeah, and then 3 days after being in the hospital, they're pumping me full of all these drugs. I was highly against it because I don't even take paracetamol. So they're trying to put these blood thinners in me. They're trying to put an intravenous drip in to get all the salts and the minerals back into my body, and IV antibiotics. And the rheumatologist comes round probably about the fourth day, and they'd done bloods on me, and he said, I'm really sorry to say, but you've got a rare autoimmune disease. It's Jo-1 antibody you're carrying in your blood. And I'm thinking, I've heard this before because I'd studied it in naturopathic medicine, certain autoimmune disease, but this was a rare one. This autoimmune disease was attacking my muscle. So basically, it was attacking the muscle cells, and it's called dermatomyositis. And I think there's like in the UK, there's like 8,700 people that actually have this condition. Obviously, in the US, I'm not sure how many it is, but it is quite rare. And I said, well, how did I get this? He said, oh, I've no idea. He said, just sometimes you got the COVID and maybe the viral impact brought it on. As your body's tried to heal, it's attacking itself. So anyway, I'm sitting in hospital and I'm just like praying to Jesus. I'm like, what, how has this happened? I've lost my husband. I've got my child that he can't not have two parents. Do you know what I mean? And I'm doing everything I can to research. How can I heal my body? How can I heal it? And I was in such a mess, to the point where I was just looking at YouTube videos online. And then that's when the light bulb kind of hit. Um, Ken Berry had came on, and then Anthony Chafee. And I was even watching a really lovely lady called Mary Ruddock. I don't know if you've ever heard of her. Yeah. So basically, she had a really rare condition and healed herself mainly on high protein diet. And I just found it absolutely fascinating. And I thought that makes sense. I'm losing muscle. I'm losing cells, and I need to add the protein to it. So that's basically where it came from, really.
Wow. And so that I guess you were released from hospital and all okay. You're given the
Yeah,
okay. And then you just went, okay, I'm doing this. I'm going
yeah,
carnivore.
yeah. And I did fall off a few times. I found it hard, as most people do when they first start it, because I'd lost so much weight. Um, I'd lost a lot because obviously your glutes have got the most muscle. I was losing so much weight off my glutes that when I sat down, the bottom of my spine, the coccyx area, was so painful to sit down that, like some days you just think, oh, I can't just do this strict diet at the moment. So I was kind of on and off for a little while. So I wasn't seeing massive um, improvements until one day I started doing it for about a week. And I could turn over in bed. I could roll over. My arms weren't hurting. My legs didn't feel heavy. Um, the one thing I didn't mention is that with the dermatomyositis, you don't always get organ involvement. Whereas me, I got lung involvement. And unfortunately, I don't do things by halves. Unfortunately, it was it was attacking my lungs. And basically, he said, if we don't put you on methotrexate, you are going to end up, you know, early death, premature death, basically. I said, I'm not going on a chemo drug. He said, but your immune system is attacked. Don't you understand? Your immune system is attacking you and we need to dampen it down. I said, but there's a reason why my immune system's attacking me and a drug isn't going to stop that. And he said, well, if you don't go on it, then we'll have to take you off the books, basically. It was like, and in a letter he wrote to my lung specialist, he said she thinks her naturopathic approach is going to save her. And yeah, he basically just, he really like bent down to my level and really scaremongered me. But I'm quite strong willed. I mean, I really am like determined that I'm not going on these drugs. There's got to be another way. And he bent down to my level and he said, I had another lady that was around the same age as you. She was a teacher. And because she didn't go on the drugs, she ended up in a wheelchair. Do you want that to happen to you? I said, it won't happen to me. He said, why do you think that? I said, I've prayed about and I know God is going to find a way for me and I am going to get over this. And he said, there's no treatment for it. You can put it into remission, but you can't completely eradicate an autoimmune disease. So I walked away and I came back in about a year's time. I think it was like by that point, 2024. And I walked in with one of my nutritional friends that I qualified with, and she was really supportive. And she sat down and she said, oh, she looks really good, doesn't she? And he said, I have to be honest. He said, whatever you're doing, he said, you look very well. And he said, can I ask, what is it you're doing? You're not on the medicines, you're not on steroid, the prednisone that I'd recommended. And I said, you know how it is when you mention the word carnivore, that kind of, it kind of turns into a brawl, doesn't it?
So, like, being carnivore for that 1 year, that just stopped the problem
So my
altogether?
muscle, it was one of those things where I told you I fell off a little bit here and there. So when I stick to it, like just the meat and the eggs and the butter, um, it's absolutely fine. Like I can walk around like normally, whereas before I couldn't. I would struggle to get out of bed. I couldn't turn over in bed. My muscles would just almost like I'd had a fight with Frank Bruno or something. I was literally felt like someone had beaten me up before I got out of bed. And this would all stop if I just took everything, if I removed all the sugar, the gluten I hadn't been eating anyway. So that had prevented my face rashes coming up because that the dermatomyositis affects the skin. And if you see other people, they've got a lot of rashes around their eyes and a halo sort of around their chest. And because I hadn't been eating the gluten, I was lucky enough that that hadn't affected my skin. But yeah, basically eating the just meat and a carnivore diet, literally all the symptoms would come to a halt. And then I'd add a few little bits back in, some carbohydrates, and I would notice, especially potatoes, that would be a no-no.
And so I mean, this is the kind of thing that, doctors should be going, right, we've got to get the Times and Newsweek on the blower and we've got to tell them about this and get them here to do an interview or something. But I imagine when you said, well, I'm doing the carnivore diet, he just went, oh, that's ridiculous. You're going to kill yourself. It's a
Yeah, but
placebo
no,
effect or something.
oh, Dave, sorry, I didn't say it like that. I said, I'm just eating a clean diet. So I'd said to him, because I knew that had I'd said that, he'd said, oh, you're going to have a heart attack or you're going to have a stroke because of your blood clot. So I kind of like said, I'm eating a very, very clean diet. And his response was, wait for it. He said, I think it's just your positive outlook on life. I think that's what's helping you.
And he didn't ask for anything else. He didn't say, well, maybe we should do some tests or anything like that.
I basically just said, I'm not eating sugar. I'm not eating gluten. I've removed all these things from my diet and I feel great. And he was like, well, I think we really should put you on the treatment because you have lung involvement. Not everybody has lung involvement and it will shorten your life. You're only 40. I was 43 at the time. He said, you're only 43 and your lung capacity is 55%. So that would be really good to go back and get the lungs retested, which I am going to do. So it'd be interesting because I feel the benefits. I feel it's changed.
Wow. So, like, when the problems started with your lungs, did you like notice it as far as did you have any breathing difficulty?
Yeah, so basically walking uphill, I'd be like, because I've got half a lung capacity. At my age, I should be sort of at near, 98 to 100%, but at half the lung capacity, I was really out of breath. It was a struggle to kind of walk for long. I like country walks and things like that. And I would find I was getting out of breath. Yeah, literally, I was in a really, really bad way. But I felt like as the more meat I was eating, it was almost like replenishing my lungs.
Wow. And so, like, if you go on one of those walks now, it feels like before you ever had a problem?
Well, it wouldn't be 100. It's not 100%, but I when I first started going for walks, that was like about 6 months after I'd got the condition. I tried to build up a bit of exercise. I couldn't even make, I would say, 10 minutes without sort of like really like really out of breath. And then carry on a year, go a year forward. I can go for country walks now for hours and, go for a good hour and I'm absolutely fine. I'm probably not as fit as one of, the next person next to me, but you can see the improvement. It's massive. My family can see the improvement.
That's it. That's fantastic. And so what do your family think about this?
Well, my mum is 100% supportive, even though she does listen to a lot that I talk about. I've helped her a lot since I've been a nutritionist, and she's cut out all the rubbish, seed oils and all of the nasties. But I don't think she'd go completely carnivore, but she's very, very supportive of me. And she said, I trust that you know what you're doing and, I support you 100%. Some other family members are not so supportive. My son and daughter they're absolutely supportive of it. They eat a lot of meat as well. But like maybe like my brother, he's like, well, where are you going to get the fibre from then? He said, I couldn't just live off meat all the time. I want a burger in a bun.
Yeah. I think the thing is, though, it's very hard to imagine how you could not have those things, like not have the bun around the burger and all that kind of thing until you've done like 90 days on carnivore and you've experienced how different you're going to feel, right?
Yeah, it's not until I think it's one of those things I probably wouldn't, well, I wouldn't have gone on it, I don't think, had I not come ill. And that's why I praise God for that because, like I said, the 3 years it was drummed into me about eating vegetables that I would have never really researched it. I wouldn't have fallen upon the carnivore diet.
So, I mean, does that put you in a kind of conundrum now? Because you've been trained to be talking about plant-based stuff and you're eating the cow's plant-based stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, it does. It's funny. I did a lot of work. Well, a lot of work was done by Dr. Sarah Myhill. I know you had her on online. She did a lot of talks for CNM, and she followed a lot of like the paleo diet. And so I think to myself, she's very well known at the College of Naturopathic Medicine, and it's kind of worked for her. So I can't see how, I can't kind of guide my clients into or my patients into becoming carnivore, but maybe like putting them on a low oxalate diet and then transitioning.
Low oxalate is code for steak. It's
That's the one, Dave.
so, how are you eating at the moment?
So I absolutely love beef. I do like lamb. We tend to have that for a roast, like I'll get a leg of lamb, but I tend to like the slow cooked beef. So sort of like short rib for sort of 4 hours. I'll slow cook that and that will last for a few days. Um, and then sort of ground beef is the easiest to do. So like this morning, I had eggs this morning, but normally because I don't normally eat until later. It's only because obviously I was coming on here, but normally I eat around about 11, and then I would sort of just do a ground beef patty with sort of Celtic salt on, and some butter, and that pretty much fills me up till tea time.
Oh, nice. And then for dinner, it'll be something like a steak or some
Yeah,
lamb or the
exactly.
ribs or whatever. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't tend to go for bacon very much.
Mm.
Um, I don't really, obviously, a lot of bacon does have nitrates in. I know you can get bacon without nitrates, but I do have pork belly because obviously you get a lot of B1 thiamine from pork, which you don't really get from beef. So occasionally I do have some pork belly.
Oh, nice. Um, yeah, so are you at home on your own or your kids still there?
Yeah, so my son's 18 and my daughter is 12. So yeah, they're living with me. My son, bless him, he's turning almost carnivore. He eats a lot of meat, obviously, because I'm preparing a lot of meat. He kind of just says, "Oh, we got meat today, Mum." Like it says, "It roast dinner again today without the potatoes." So yeah, no, they're pretty good. They kind of just go along with it, and I just put as much meat as I can, especially for my daughter, because you know there's so many children going around now, or young women that have got low iron levels. And my son's girlfriend, bless her, she's so lovely, but she's got really, really low iron levels. I said, all you need is just to eat a steak, maybe some liver. And she says, oh no. And she has a lot of kind of like beige food. And I try and, Luke, my son tries to get her to eat burgers and things like that. Because, that time of the month for women, they're more likely to get iron deficiency. So for my daughter, I kind of give her quite a lot of steak around that time because it's rife. Iron deficiency is absolutely rife, especially in women.
Yeah, and when you talk about things like cycle, it's like I've realized, never having experienced this myself, but just talking to people, I've realized how important a high fat diet is for women because
Absolutely.
so many people have told me regulates my cycle, I don't have pain anymore, and all this kind of thing.
That's basically what happened to me, Dave. I noticed that my monthly cycle, I was getting migraines. And the minute I just upped the level of, I'd have a little bit of liver, chicken liver now and again, beef liver, sometimes a bit difficult to eat. But I would add that in and no headaches, no migraines.
Yeah, it's almost like, I can kind of understand how people look at carnivores and go, "Oh, you're all crazy," because it's like it feels like this one fits all kind of solution. There's just this one switch you turn on and like everything's suddenly fine, but it actually does work.
It does. I mean, like anything, you're always skeptical, aren't you, to start with? And you think, you just get programmed, don't you, from a very young age? Eat your vegetables, eat your sprouts, eat your peas on the plate. Not that my family were ever like that, but it's just kind of like when you went round your grandmother's house or a family member's house, it would always be emphasis on eat your vegetables first, and the meat last. And that is the most nutrient dense part of the meal.
Yeah, and everything else on the plate is actually working against you, to stop you absorbing the nutrients from the meat. Um, so you feel like there's no going back now?
There's no going back now. The minute I introduce, like I said to you, especially potatoes, that is the worst for me. I would just go back to the start again. I can eat occasionally a little bit of broccoli. You're probably thinking, why would you? But it's one of those things. If it was, cauliflower cheese or something like that, and the kids have got a little bit for roast dinner just to break it up a little bit. I'd kind of eat a bit of that. But to be honest with you, I do work best just having the protein. And I think you mentioned it on one of your other talks about how you just build this muscle up even without sort of doing so much exercise, you know.
It's amazing. It's just like, hang on, I'm not doing anything. Like usually in life, you have to work for things to happen, and this is it's just coming on. It's awesome.
I know, and obviously that's a you know, kind of the biggest thing for me because I'm losing muscle cells. I would use retention bands, obviously, just to kind of build up my glutes and stuff while I was really poorly, because that was the most I could muster at the time. But being on the carnivore diet, I just feel like the muscle cells are like really like expanding in my body. And I've not done like heavy weights or anything like that, but I can feel it coming back.
That's fantastic. That's yeah, and it's just when you think about it, imagine if you had just said, "Yeah, sure, give me the methotrexate." And then it's like, when you were a kid, did you have those choose your own adventure books? When you go through the books and it was like, next you can go this way, you can go this way. And
What
it's
path?
like that. What would be happening now if you'd chosen that path?
Well, it's the way I always look at it. It's like turning on a tap. The water's running, but you put a cloth up into the tap, but the water's still coming. You have it. All you've got to do is switch the tap off, but you're not. The problem's still there, but you're just trying to plug it up, but it's still coming.
If one of your friends said to you, "Okay, Claire, I'm convinced. I'm gonna give this a try. I'm willing to commit to 90 days. Tell me what to do." What advice or tips would you give them?
Well, strangely enough, as I told you about my friend that I qualified with, she's lovely, Miriam, and she's helped me massively on my journey. And I told her that I'd become carnivore, and she was trying to make up a lovely plan for me and everything like that. And she said, "I know you like a lot of meat. I'm going to put a lot of meat in there. Don't worry." And she was kind of like, she tried it herself. She did try it herself, but she had other medical issues that she'd sorted out. She had epilepsy, and she'd sorted it out herself. And basically, she got her bloods done, and she said, "Oh, I got my bloods back, and the cholesterol was a little bit high, and I'm a little bit worried that, that having all this meat may have affected me." I said, "No, there's nothing, there's nothing wrong with having high cholesterol. It's all," she said, "I know, it's just we've been programmed at the nutritional college. We've just been programmed that vegetables bring all these, they bring all these vitamins and minerals in, and flavonoids and all of this lot, and vitamin C to help your body, and all of these sort of things." She said it's really hard to get out of, the program of it. So she did try it for a little bit, and she said, "No, I do eat quite a high meat diet anyway. I just don't know if I can completely remove the vegetables." So every time I send her these videos, and she loves them, like Sarah Myhill had just recently done one, and Mary Ruddock, and she's like, Do you know what? Though I think there's something in this. I really wish I could just give up vegetables completely, and just not have this rainbow on my plate and just stick to meat." So I do I am quite strong in my, what it's done to me. She's seen how it's changed me. She said, "It's amazing, Claire." She said, "It's absolutely amazing how it's worked for you." And she said, if I was as poorly as you were," she said, "I would have done exactly the same thing."
So, Claire, if people want to reach out to you, do you have any way of getting in contact? Any social media or anything?
So for a little while, I did take a big step back from social media. So I wasn't using a lot of platforms. I'm just reinstating myself now. So I've just joined up to LinkedIn. Um, And so you can reach me mainly on that one, but I am going to start a YouTube channel. I'm just putting all the pieces together at the moment. So yeah, just LinkedIn really at the moment.
Yeah, no worries. I'll link to that in the show notes. Claire, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Dave, for having me. And thank you for all the work that you are doing. You know, having found you, and all the different stories that other people with such rare conditions, it really puts people in the right, the right direction. So thank you for everything you're doing, Dave.